So we already started talking about the mental formations, aggregates of mental formations. Similarly, as in the Anatalakkhana Sutta, talks of the past, the present, the future, the near, the far, the gross, the subtle, the external, internal, and so on. And so in the contemplation, where one does not identify with it anymore, he does not take it as me, as mine, or as myself. Like in the Sutta, it says, he asks, is a mental formations permanent or impermanent? And the monks answered, impermanent, Bhante. Is what is changes impermanent? Is it suffering or happiness? Of course, this is suffering. And is what is suffering and changes, is it self or non-self? Then it says non-self. And when you realize with right view and so on, all these are not me, not mine, not myself, then the monks got strong detachment, disgust, disenchantment, and from there the mind will free. Here the monks refer to the 5 ascetics, and through that discourse they became arahats. Now, of course, the sutta is a more concise of what actually happened, and the argument, the line of thought and reasoning will be such, but seems to be very simple. But it is not, because when you talk of impermanence, you're talking of a different type of impermanence. When you talk of suffering, you talk of a different type of suffering. When you talk of non-self, a different type of non-self. We'll talk a bit rather about this body, feelings and perceptions. We also talk a bit about this mental formations, and here the mental formations are the sankhara khandha, all those volitional mental activities that involve creation. About this creation part, I remember during my study of Abhidhamma, Tasangaha of Abhidhamma, we follow the syllabus as taught in the university in Bangkok. That was started by this Jyotika, which is sent over from Burma to start the university. So they have a certain system of going about it. Some of the first part, they learn about the 4 Paramattha Dhammas, the 4 ultimate realities. What are they? Then after that, they learn about the categories. That means the four ultimate realities. They group them in different ways, and they have different names of it. For example, the 5 aggregates or the 5 answers. After that, you go into the actual thought processes. For example, the 17 thought moments. For example, the 17 thought moments, the 11 mind dominance. All through this, you can see how the mind is being come together and started all the creation in the world. And after that, you learn about the karma and the results of karma. And after that, you learn about the different planes of existence. So here, you begin to realize what they are teaching. Because the first thing I learn or look for is how I can make use of it in my practice. But when you come to this part, I realized that they were actually having a detailed description of how the mind creates the whole universe that we live in. It is interesting because when we practice, we actually see this in action. Because when you practice Vipassana, first we also look into the ultimate realities. And after that, when you look into the ultimate realities, you see the different relationships involved with the ultimate realities. They're all interconnected. The difference is in the book, you only have it as ideas. In practice, you actually see it happening. And when you start watching all these things as you meditate, you notice all these thought processes going on and how it starts creating the world we live in. So that's where this sankhara khandha comes in, the aggregate of mental formation. So as we said yesterday, there's this punya-bhi sankhara, apunya-bhi sankhara, anenya-bhi sankhara. No, punya-bhi sankhara, apunya-bhi sankhara are all the unwholesome states. And so when it's unwholesome, you can see how the mind behaves, how it creates things, how it tortures you, how it makes you sick. And it just doesn't stop there. It keeps on doing it. And it has geometric extensions of these conditions. For example, you're angry, you end up also make your your friends angry, your wife angry, your children angry, and they will go out and make other people angry. So on the other hand, if you are having wholesome state, mindful and so on, then you find that the nature of that volition that creates things also create all the healthy and nice things. At the beginning you see it more generally in the daily life. But when you meditate, you can start seeing it happening in the mental level. For example, you meditate and you have this thinking going on, and then just thinking about this anger, thinking with craving, and then you find that all these mental states create all those terrible feelings in your body. So the effect is not just in the mind, but also in the body. Similarly, when you're mindful, you see the mindful, all the wholesome mental states come in together and everything works well. For example, when your mindfulness is strong, everything is well balanced, the mind is well balanced. And so, when the mind is well balanced and flexible, the mind can do many good things. And it becomes stronger, it brings about deeper concentration, it brings about insight. It changes the whole world around you. So in Vipassana, you do watch all these things happening. Sankhara Kanda. How? First, of course, with regards to our thinking and mental activities. Then when you want to be more precise, then you see the intention. That watching intention is a very important part of Vipassana. First, where it is necessary if you if you wish for a continuity in mindfulness. As said by one teacher, if you do not see your intention, notice your intention, it's very difficult to see the beginning of the action. And you miss out seeing a clear, at least from the very beginning, the conditioning between mind and body. And if you miss this conditioning, then you miss a very strong input or experience for the development for the experience of anatta, non-self. What you intend is also like a wish for something to happen. For example, in the beginning there is this more general and bigger one, which we call it a kind of motivating force. For example, when you want to do something, you start with the motivation, an aim, an objective, and from there it follows with many subsidiary ones. For example, you want to do something in life. First you want to look for a job. So you have to start looking for a job. After that, what job do you want? And if you found a job, then there are so many other intentions that follow. So you have one main strong one followed by all the little ones. So it is a line of conditioning and wishing and wanting, and finally what you end up with is may not be what you expect. But what we are talking about now is about meditation. So you want to come to meditate. So you have to start looking for the conditions and so on to meditate. Usually when you come to meditate, you have a modulo, you have a form, a reason why do you want to meditate. Sometimes I never filled it in when I see the form. You didn't fill up the motivation for meditation, reason to come to meditate. So I didn't think it was necessary. Is it because you don't know? Usually people have some idea. Otherwise they won't come, but knowing it clearly is also important, because then you'll be more, your goal and orientation will be stronger to what you want to create or become. Then you start refining it, or what to do in the moment, which can be quite confusing. But we've simplified everything for you. You have this one, just go with the flow. But this comes with experience. This is just like a map, but when you start traveling, then you see many other things. Now what happens when you come to Vipassana is kind of different sort of journey. In the beginning it's not too much different from things that you do or samatha. For example, the main thing is to keep your mind clear of hindrances and to develop some degree of concentration. But after that, this becomes different, because it's a development of insight. And this is a kind of, we say, a transcendental path. It is making a path out of samsara. That means all the time, all the things that the mind does in this creation is create all those stories, all those worlds within worlds, and so No end to it. Like the chicken and the egg. The chicken lays the egg, and the egg becomes a chicken. The chicken lays another egg, the egg becomes a chicken. So we end up with a lot of chickens and a lot of eggs. Martin will be very happy. But in this case, in Vipassana, it is not creating samsara, it is breaking down samsara. So it's just like when you put an end to samsara, what do? You go to find an axe and a saw, everything you can get hold which is sharp and cutting. For example, earlier on, I give you an example of samsara as a big tree, And on the tree you hang a lot of skeletons and heads. And after that there are a lot of the roots hanging out that go around, catch people. On the top of that it can walk and move. And this has the power to create illusions. So now you got to get rid of that thing. So you must find the right axe and right knife and the right thing so that you can chase out of the tree and start sawing. So this is a different type of intention and volition, which is actually stopping that creation. First you must see where the roots are and where the heads are and where the big banyan tree is walking. So you can watch the whole scene, then you know it's terrible. Otherwise you say, oh, you lovely tree, I will love you forever, and grab hold of the tree, the tree grab hold of you, and then you die life after life, suffer. So it involves first some degree of understanding. That means you see the ultimate realities as they are, see them changing all the time. And from there you develop a strong detachment. So the impermanence is like cutting. Then seeing the suffering is like throwing away. Anatta is, going into a state that is free from this, all this. So the whole thing involves a wanting not to want. Seems to be contradictory. Not really, because the wish is not a craving. Because people, when they say they want something, often it comes with craving, but not necessarily. This craving, of course, do happen in meditation when you crave for results. You want a result, you cannot get, I want. When you cannot get it, you get angry. And so the final thing we say is, you cannot want, you cannot crave for Nibbana. In Abhidhamma we studied that the craving can take anything as an object except Magga Phala Nibbana. Even the insight can be an object of craving. You can crave for knowledge. Of course, in the world it's not too bad, the worst things. But you can gain knowledge without craving for it. But in the beginning, usually there is some. Even in Vipassana, usually beginning there is some. I want to be Arahant. You know what the Arahant is? Many of them don't really know. Like somebody said, if you know what it is, then you won't want it. Because the Arahant is not wanting anything. But it doesn't mean they don't do anything. But they can still have compassion and help you. And so when you practice meditation and looking at all these sankharas and these volitions, then this volition to end samsara become more clear what it is, and more refined what it is, and more precise what it is, then all your energy will go there. It becomes deep when it is become automatic. It's only in remote control, not direct control. Because when you go into deeper levels of insight and so on, you cannot think. Because once you think and you have concept, the whole process is broken. It's fed from what that happens before that transcendental concentration comes. In the beginning, it is of course this like adhitthana, aspirations, affirmations, so on. After that, it becomes what you call to the level of inference. So you can see many things can be learned from mindfulness of mental formations. Okay, enough with that. Now we go to the fifth aggregate consciousness, Vijnana Khandha. Now this would come under this Cittanupassana, mindfulness of consciousness. But here you can look at it in a different way. Because the word Vijnana also means consciousness as well. It has been translated as consciousness. But often it's used to refer to certain natures of the consciousness. For example, I read somewhere in a scholastic work that in the past this word vijnana used to mean the soul. I suppose it could be true because in the Thai language, when they use the word vinyan, sometimes they mean the soul. Of course, when you come into Buddhism and the Buddha's teachings, many of these words have changed their meaning. For example, the word Brahmin. No? Brahmin is supposed somebody of a high class, whereas the Buddha, somebody who is high class is not because of birth, but because of his actions. And it seems to me that this word is used more often referring to resultant consciousness. Of course, it's used also in other ways, including active consciousness, but very often I see it referring to, for example, the life continuum, the Bhavanga Citta. For example, the Paticca Samuppada, the dependent origination, Avijja Paccaya Sankhara, Sankhara Paccaya Vijnana. That means from delusion, conditions the arising of formations. Formations, conditioning, arising of consciousness. And this consciousness is usually referred to is the Bhavanga Citta, the life continuum, the resultant consciousness. So in this case, I would like to look at it more in terms of bhumi, plains. So you will study citta in Abhidhamma. It is first divided into plains. There are 4 plains: Kama Vachara, Rupa Vachara, Arupa Vachara, Lokuttara. Sensual plane, form planes, formless plane, and supramandana. Rupa, that is form, formless, and supramandana. Now you look at these planes in terms of consciousness. For example, you look at this world, you said there are different levels, planes in the mondo. Looking at this conventional world. For example, we talk of the lowlands, the plains, Pyanura. And so the people who live in these lowlands are called flatlanders. That's what the Swiss call us. They're different from the highlanders. What's the difference between flatlanders and highlanders? It's also something I learned from the Swiss. The flatlanders get tired climbing the mountain. Highlanders get tired walking on the flat land. Different situation. And then there are those that live in the clouds. These are the devas, no? And also birds. How do they live there? They must have wings. So what I'm trying to tell you is, this level in consciousness, there are a different range of objects. For example, in the flat land, you have these things like paddy fields. You have this thing like, sea snakes. When you go highlands, you have other type of things. You have mountain gorillas. And when you go to the snowlands, you have these yetis. So you look at it in terms of the mind, it is like that. The different levels of the consciousness, they have different objects, and different mental states operate more into levels, and different type of thought processes run through. For example, when you go to the Rupa Vachara, the form states are the jhanic states. Depending on the type of jhanas, there's the form jhana and the formless jhanas. For example, the form jhanas, there are 3 types of categories of consciousness: the kusala, the vipaka, and the functional. That is the kriya, salutary. The vipaka is like a come un life continuum vitale del Brahma. That means when a person active jhana, is going to jhana 1, 2, 3, and after that he dies, he will be reborn in Brahma. And the basic consciousness of the Brahma is the result of the jhana, which is a jhanic resultant. Third type is the Arahant, goes into jhana. And so, for example, if a person, in the case of a Brahma, his base of consciousness and his range of objects is different. For example, from what we learned, a Brahma can see and can hear, but there's no body object, there's no smell, there's no taste. But you can see the body there, but he does not feel anything. Wouldn't it be boring? For them it's better, because all those are very gross material objects. On the top of that, there's no such thing as male or female. They all look the same. Because they don't have, at that level, this This what you call anger, for example, is not there. The craving is also, if there is, it's very minor. It's not sensual. The sensual world, the craving and anger, it can be very strong. And so when you go to Abrahma, not Abrahma, go to Arupa realm, then there's no matter. That means Arupa Brahmas, they have no eyes, no ears, no nose. They're only the mind there. Where are these Arupa Brahmas? You cannot find them anywhere. Because the place is a function of Rupa. They're nowhere. So it's just a mental state. So wouldn't it be boring? No, it's very, very peaceful. So you see all the different thought processes and different mental states, all you look at it not in terms of a place, but as a consciousness. So coming back to the sensual realm, coming back to all you very intelligent people. So all of you have this basic Bhavanga, consciousness. And so each one is different. Piero's Bhavanga is different from Sandro's Bhavanga, is different from Alberto's Bhavanga. Although you can put them under certain names, but each one is different because the objects and how they came about, the conditioning are all different, but they belong to the same level you find in the human realms, which come under different type of bhavangas as well. And so from this, depend on this, there arises different types of objects, different types of processes, different types of other types of consciousness. No? So the whole range. This gives you a better sense of what consciousness means as a whole. So you look at consciousness not as one thing, but as many things, as an aggregate. And so when you come to this meditation, you watch this aggregate of consciousness arise and pass away. Of course, you start by watching to the point where you watch each consciousness arise and pass away. The moment arise and pass away. If you watch it properly, then you can see it, the whole mass of it. When you see the whole mass of it, then it's an inferential knowledge. But for the very moment, it just becomes transcendental. This is important because consciousness, as I said, is very, what people always attach to as permanent. Even in Buddhist, you find that there are so many schools that arose, and some of them they attach to the consciousness as permanent. And even people who meditate, then they get some blank state, peaceful state. They say, "Oh, there's nothing there; it's pure emptiness." But it's not. It's a very subtle, peaceful type of consciousness. We stop here today.